Alex Martin. I'm here with two amazing partners in crime to bring you a workshop about fundraising events in 2020, which is definitely my favorite topic. And we're recording this on August 4th, 2020. It's going to be part of the Advancement Northwest conference that will be held in a couple of weeks. So if you're tuning in and watching this, thank you for watching it. And we hope to see you at the conference on August 21st. We'd love to meet with you and answer questions that you might have after viewing our very exciting session. So before we get into our content, I wanted to introduce us. My name is Alex Martin. I own an event planning company called Synchronicity. I've been an event planner in Seattle for 22 years, and up until 4.5 months ago, all of our events were held in big ballrooms and gorgeous gardens and spaces where people came together, you know, with their bodies and talked and ate and made community. And now we make community inside this rectangle right here, and it's wonderful, right? And I'll leave it there, and I'll let my co-panelists introduce themselves. Nina, let's hear from you.
Hello, everybody. Nina Yarbrough, Business Development Manager for the Central District Forum for Arts and Ideas, or CD Forum for short. And I was able to connect with Alex and Synchronicity because we held our first virtual fundraising event, this past July 11th. CD Forum, we're a 20-year-old organization. We're just hitting our 21st year. And like a lot of arts and culture organizations, we were all live in person with a social media presence, but not to the extent that we have now. So we had to pivot and rethink ourselves and accelerate different aspects of our programming. And we find ourselves in this new world that everybody's living in. My background is in theater. I came to Seattle, 6 years ago now, for my master's at Seattle University, the MFA in Arts Leadership program. I've gotten to work for a couple really cool organizations, and I'm in my second year at CD Forum. And I'm on this very new, fun, rocky, scary, exciting journey of virtual integrated programming and fundraising like everybody else. So thanks for coming along for the ride, and thanks Alex for inviting me today. And I will pass it to my new friend Rosa.
Thank you so much, Nina. I, as she mentioned, am Rosa Nicole Booker. I just this year in 2020, a fine year to start an event engineering business. But I did do that, and I have found major success because there is still a huge need for people to engineer their events. They are just much different events than what we're used to. I have about 20 years experience in event engineering and the corporate, nonprofit, and collegiate, as well as private areas. And as well as these ladies have an artist, a theatrical background where I studied in school, and a styling background, all of which are very instrumental in performing when you have to come to an event. So I am grateful as well to be here and to enjoy this conference with all of you.
Amazing. Welcome, welcome. All right, I'm going to just jump right into our agenda. So these 4 topics are what we want to cover with you today, dear friends who we cannot see, but you're seeing us and hearing us. So funny. So we wanted to start with what's working, like really just walk you through some strategies that we see working around town. I know all of you, as you're all fundraising professionals, you're thinking about how are we going to raise some money this year? Is an event going to be part of it? And you're probably watching some of these strategies and picking up on, okay, these are the ways to go, but we wanted to walk through what's working. And then after that, we're going to talk about how you, dear fundraising professional, are going to need to reimagine how you work in 2020. What does your team look like? What do your timelines look like? What does your work look like in order to pull an event off? Because it's just really different than planning it's a lot the same and a lot different than planning your in-person event. And then there's some challenges I want to mention. So topic 3 here will be just a few things I think we should get out in front of so that they don't challenge us. All right. And then we're going to finish up by saying, here's how to move forward. I think that, you know, between myself and Nina and Rosa, we have had success. So we want to share that success. We want you to feel that forward momentum. So diving right into what's working. First topic, ready? Everyone ready? Woo! These are 4 strategies that personally I see working for my clients around town. We have, oh gosh, I don't know, between what we've done already in the spring and summer and what we're planning for the fall, these seem like tried and true. If anything could feel tried and true in 2020. Peer-to-peer campaign. I know that Rosa and Nina both are familiar with this, and I know many of you out there listening are as well. Nina or Rosa, is there any words you want to offer about, I don't know if you need to describe exactly what it is, but maybe why it's working?
Oh, well, I will say we all know there are lots of factors that go into the success of any aspect of your fundraising and things that are hyper specific to your organization and your constituency. But I'm a student of best practice as much as possible. And I feel like the things that we'll discuss, these are not necessarily new to the areas of fundraising, but they're being used, I think, in a way that is cognizant of what's happening. For example, like for us, the peer-to-peer campaign was a new venue. By the time we encountered needing to create a virtual fundraising experience, we had just made the decision to cancel. Our original fundraiser was June 6th, and it was meant to end our fiscal year. And we kind of have been having these fundraising events that sort of put the bookend to our season. It's a moment of celebration, and then we take a break. But with all of the shifting and the pivoting, we realized that that's not necessarily possible. So not only did we not end our fiscal year in a fundraiser, but we began our new fiscal year with a fundraiser, which involved components we hadn't used before. But they were still things that are, I think, in general, part of best practice fundraising, with like engaging your constituents, looking to see who your supporters are, and just trying something new, honestly. Rosa, I know we have lots of things that we're going to cover, but initially, Rosa, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
No, that was great. I just would say that it's going to be particular to each organization. And so that's the main takeaway, is whether you're doing virtual, whether you're choosing one of these 4 options, even before when we were all doing in-person events, it's all going to be specific to your organization, your budget, your constituent, what works for you and your attendees. So I think we'll get to a lot of what that will look like as we break down these 4 sections.
Oh, totally. I'll just say for peer-to-peer in general, I think the reason it's working so well is it does ask friends to talk to their friends. And I think in our current, whatever phase we're in, or if we're in lockdown, or if we're in quarantine, whatever, we're looking for those opportunities to connect with our community. And so peer-to-peer actually builds that in a really healthy way, if it's done right, I think. And then I did just want to mention silent auction, because it's something that I personally have done a 180 on. Oh, let me share my screen again. I took that away so people could see our faces, but let me bring that back. So silent auction is a tactic that a lot of groups are familiar with because they've done the silent auction. But in the online space, it's actually way more fun. So having that moment to like shop on your phone at home with a glass of wine, instead of in a crowd where there's people like jumping in, trying to bid in front of you, and you're trying to relax. Anyway, I think silent auctions are super fun now. Whereas if you had asked me 6 months ago, I would have said silent auction, worst. ROI, worst, it's no fun. Anyway, so I've seen some groups do a really effective online event that's basically just a nice landing page and a silent auction and a donate now button. And that becomes their event for the year. I don't think we should discount that option. Okay, now we're going to talk about 2 that are maybe more, what should we say? So the first 2, peer-to-peer campaign and silent auction, could just be run basically on their own. It's just like do a nice landing page, put up some nice content and stories, and raise some money through either one or both of those tactics, and definitely a donate now button as well, right? Just always that. But then these last 2, pre-recorded video broadcast and or live stream event, are a little bit more production heavy, a little bit more staffing, a little bit more adrenaline, because it's actually going to happen at a certain time on a certain date. So I'm going to go forward into a little series of slides from Rosa showing us about a pre-recorded video broadcast event that she produced. Are you ready, Rosa? Shall I go into this?
Please.
Tell us all about this.
Thank you. So this page here, what we did is we created a little bit of exclusivity so that we did not charge You know, normally we would charge for a banquet ticket. We didn't charge for that, but we still wanted it to feel like something that was just particular to those that registered. So there was only this landing page originally. When you go to the website, you can click through to be a sponsor, you can click through to register, or you can click through, which would go directly to the original donate page, but you still get that sense of an event is happening, something is going on, I want to know how to be involved. And then the next slide will show you, once you've registered for this event or become a sponsor for this event, then you would get special access to this hidden event page that would be found on the website. So we also created a Facebook event page for those that are big into Facebook, and a way to just kind of gain some community around the event during the time. The links would bring you to the registration. Registration would bring you to here. So we had a really fun, interactive block here that would give the countdown so that people really feel like they're getting ready and geared up for something. And then the next slide will show you, once that countdown is over, then voila, like magic, here we have our actual produced event that was pre-recorded. And we have, you know, arrows. What you really want to do, and as well, we didn't speak too much about it with the silent auction and doing things online, is that you just want to make sure people that aren't used to doing these things are well prepared. They have all of the information. So we even went to the little arrows at the bottom that tell them exactly where to click, how to see it. So they're not looking at the event through a tiny little screen, but they would expand it fully. And then as the event goes, the next screen will kind of show, if you were on this event page and you scrolled below the video, you would see your options to donate. You would get a little bit of information of why we're doing this event, what your donation is going to, and then our self-made thermometer, which you can see at the bottom, which tells you how much we raised so far and what the goal is that we're looking towards. And then,
sorry, I'm just going to interject. Thermometers, you guys. I think that's what it's all about. I just think your community wants to see you winning, and they want to see the part they play in that. And any chance you can, whether it's a glass that fills, or this arrow that moves, or the bar that fills with whatever, with a flower that grows, however you can visually bring that. Not in numbers, but in a visual. Anyway, I see thermometers being a huge thing. They never were a huge thing before. I'm just going to turn it back over to you, Rosa.
No, I'm glad that you highlighted that, because I really pushed for this thermometer, and not a lot of people on staff that are contributing to the event will understand the importance of this. But I have to tell you, the amount of emails that I got that said, hey, I didn't see that thermometer move. I get, you know, this gift came in, that gift came in. People want to see that and celebrate with it. So thank you for interjecting. The next slide, if you were on the site and were to scroll down, again, you would see that we are able to acknowledge our volunteers, our partners, our program presenters, and our sponsors. And so this is a way to make sure we're still gaining acknowledgement. We're having to completely change our sponsorship packets. We can't exactly offer the same sponsorship packet levels as before, because it's going to come differently. It's going to come with online recognition, social media mentions, spotlights, and then on your pre-recorded video mention and credits. So this is just another one of the ways to make sure that you are highlighting them as they come along, and then, you know, having a great website engineer that's able to help you along the way to make sure that all of these things are able to get added in a timely manner.
This looks incredible.
Thanks.
Congratulations.
Yeah, I had a really great friend, the development person at Neighborhood House. I was invited to their event, had some great insight. And so, you know, that's another thing too, is the collaborative work that's been happening around this time has been super encouraging and tremendous. And I really loved a lot of the ways that they put their things together. So there are myriad ways that you can do this. You know, you can take something and let that spin you off into what's right, again, for your particular organization.
I feel like people are being less protective over their tactics for how you do it successfully. And that's what I've been like, even just like, I feel like I'm learning right now, which is incredible.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, I'll even go one step bigger. I even have a client who, for the first time ever, is teaming up with another nonprofit to throw a joint. They're throwing a fundraising concert, and they're going to split the proceeds. And I thought, wow, that is very 2020, just mutual aid, mutual support. So like professionally and on the organizational level, like, hey, we're all serving the same community. Let's go ahead and raise funds. Anyway, I just, very inspiring.
Well, and the thing too with Arturo was, hey, you know what? I received this feedback. This was something that was his very first time doing it. And, so it's helpful to get the other side when you're presenting to your group to get, well, what are our donors thinking and what are our, all of our registrants thinking on the other side of it. So it was very beneficial and a learning tool for the both of us. It was awesome.
Nice. All right, Nina, we're going to talk about your CD Forum events. I'm just going to start going through these slides.
Yeah. So CD Forum is a Black arts and culture organization. We were created 21 years ago to provide a platform for Black artists to have their voices heard, to get people to understand how enriching the Black experience was. So we work with dancers, writers, choreographers to produce in-person events and give artists a platform and develop them in mentorship. So we wanted to celebrate that. And again, our original shtick was we were gonna have like a really swanky masquerade ball because our kind of theme this year was unmasked, Blackness is not a monolith. So kind of playing off of that, we were gonna completely transform our space, and then COVID happened, and then we were like, oh my God, what are we gonna do? So again, about the time that we decided to go virtual, we met up with Synchronicity, and Synchronicity was able to help us think through what are the possibilities of a virtual fundraising event look like and with what's happening right now. So we, again, discussed options for peer-to-peer with a kind of like, what does that look like? Because we haven't done it. And ultimately what we landed on is that we were gonna do a week-long peer-to-peer campaign using a particular online fundraising platform. We went with Give Lively, which once we were able to get everything set up, I was really impressed by the platform itself. It was pretty easy to navigate. This is not being sponsored by Give Lively, FYI. I'm just letting you guys know what we used and what worked. There were a few other recommendations that Synchronicity gave us, and we just kind of explored and landed with Give Lively. Things that were important to us is that our CRM is Salesforce, and it was important that we be able to integrate this information on the back end. Also, being able to process credit cards in a safe and secure way. Give Lively uses Stripe, which I think a lot of folks may be familiar with. Give Big used to use Stripe as the processor on the back end. So there are a lot of people you may have accounts with. And so again, peer-to-peer was something that was new for us. And what we landed with was a week of peer-to-peer campaigning. We did not instruct our table captains. That's kind of, we call them like our table captains champions. We kind of use those terms interchangeably. We didn't set goals for them. Our whole thing is like, we want this to be as accessible for people as possible. And we work with a lot of artists. And our curator, Dana Terrell, who is an incredible artist and just advocate for creatives, made it very clear that if we're going to ask artists who are experiencing a lot of trauma right now to potentially participate, how can we remove those barriers for participation? And so our whole thing is like, maybe I can't raise $1,000 amongst my network, but maybe I have the ability to get 5 of my friends to donate $10, or maybe I have the ability to get 20 of my friends to donate $50. So we never dictated to our table captains how much they had to raise, but our goal was by the time we went public with our campaign, we would have X number of table captains with their campaign pages already set up to encourage people. And people ended up setting their own goals. And I think when we were just about to launch, I think the collective goal that they had put out was about $5,000. And then by the time we go into the event, we had already raised $14,000 from our table captains from their own peer-to-peer campaign. So not only did they exceed their goal that was originally put, but we basically raised almost all of our broader goal. We had a $20,000 goal going into this fundraiser. And I'll be honest, I was real skeptical about it working because we hadn't engaged our constituents in that way. But what was really great is that the Give Lively platform was very user friendly. What you're seeing would be the public landing page that if you were interested in the CD Forum campaign for the Bougie Brunch Soiree, which is what we evolved our fundraiser into, this is where you would land and you would be able to see, oh, who's already made a fundraising campaign, and then it takes you to links to participate. So the peer-to-peer campaign was more successful than I thought, and it allowed us to just engage with people who love us. And that was our whole, in talking to Synchronicity and the team, the whole point was, who are those people that already love us, and how can they, given the pandemic, given the civil uprisings, people who say they actually want to support Black people and Black artistry, then this was a way for them to turn that into action. And Alice, if you want to go to the next slide. So what did we actually do? So the Bougie Brunch Soiree was essentially like a virtual bougie gathering. And the whole template was like, food is really important to CD Forum. We like feeding people's hearts, minds, and souls, but their bellies. And we work with Black chefs and caterers, and this pandemic caused us to cancel contracts. And so one of the ways we were able to still honor the spirit of that was to have a brunch. And what that meant is that we were able to look into our roster of caterers, and we had like a limited list, I think it was about 3 caterers of folks who were still working during the pandemic, who were able to still get food orders to people. And we didn't ask them to come up with special menus or anything, but a lot of them kind of developed their own brunch menu, and you could order your food. Alex, you were able to get things delivered, but the event itself, it was a combination of the streaming and pre-recorded, and we were in a studio. We had a limited staff inside of a studio. We engaged a set designer, and we had a really amazing host. I'm sure, Rosa, you've experienced this with events you've kind of tapped into. If the host is not popping, your event is not popping. And that became so incredibly resonant, and Alex is smiling because she participated. And in a very limited space, we were able to do what we're good at, which is telling our story. And Alex, if you want to go to the next slide, so our setup, Alex was on our behind the scenes team. Having a production team to manage this process, we were able to work with Synchronicity and then Michael B. Main. Hopefully folks are familiar with him as an artist and a photographer, but he is an incredible production lead. And as you can see, Alex had on one screen, it was her feed in Remo, which was our platform. It was our venue platform, because Synchronicity helped us kind of think outside of the box, which is what a lot of us are going to have to be doing. And then she also had like the run of show. So there was a lot going on behind the scenes to make the experience as good as possible. If you want to head to the next one, Alex.
The next one has the food in it. So let's get real excited.
Yeah. And so I think this kind of encapsulates like what it's gonna be like. So we had this sort of hybrid thing. Like there was a very produced show, right? And that's what we're good at. We put on shows with Randy Ford, who was our host. We were live in a studio, but we, like a lot of orgs, went into our archives, and we were able to put together this run of show that told our story and celebrated what we've been doing up until this point. So we used, for the venue, a platform called Remo. It was a really interesting and awesome experience, and it just provided something that was different than a Zoom or Facebook Live that enabled guests to interact with each other as close to an in-person experience as possible. And between table captains kind of encouraging their network to sign up and get in, and then people just like actually engaging with the software was really cool. Not perfect. There was a learning curve because it's new and we're all learning new stuff. But as you can see, Alex is a participant. She ordered her food. She was in the platform. And what was great about Remo, again, not sponsored, this is not an advertisement, but it's what we used and it did work, is that the breakout sessions, it's unlike Zoom where you have to force yourself into a breakout and it can be a little awkward. You literally just kind of table hop, and it really worked for us. And I know there are other platforms that are out there that are being developed, but just again, having a great partner like Synchronicity to help us think through broader possibilities, I can foresee being like a huge factor in success. Like, I think fundraising teams are really great at figuring it out on their own, because doing an event, it's like, you got some glue sticks and some Mod Podge and glitter, and you make it work. and you can pull a whole mood. But in this new age with the hybrid, whether it's live stream, pre-recorded, you're going to have to build a much more dynamic team than I think we're necessarily used to.
Good stuff. I think that takes us, oh, wait, I want to talk about this. So I'm up at the top center of this photo, and Nina's over on the left. She was in the studio with our on-screen talent. So this is something we love to do at the end of our live stream event, is after we hang up the event, we close the event, then we all get on a Zoom call, we have cheers and congratulate each other on amazing work. So this is one of my team members, a bunch of CD Forum folks, and Michael B. Main, who is our AV tech producer. So anyway, just something to look forward to. We love to do this because otherwise you're sitting there at home going, did something just happen? What just happened? So celebrating together.
Last thing I'll say, Alex, that again, going back to that best practice, there are things that you do in a normal production schedule that it might be easy to forget about. You always have a post-show wrap-up. You always do, there are just certain things that you do in person that still translate to keep run of show and just wrapping up, because otherwise I feel like these things can just kind of go into the netherworld. But even this is a nice capstone for us as however you do it, just don't forget those things that make closing out an event just kind of tight.
Wonderful. All right, so that was what's working, and now we're on to our second section of content. And in this section, we just wanted to, just the three of us, give some anecdotes and some things we've learned about how this work is going to be different this year, because it just is. We're just not, anyway. I'm going to actually make this screen share go away just so people can see our faces, because we're all so good looking and I want them to be able to really understand us. But just as we go through this, just be talking and thinking about all the ways in which working on online events is different than in person. Anyone want to start us off?
Yeah, I will definitely jump right in there. I think one of the biggest things to reimagine is just your hands on deck, because you're not having your venue, you're not having your caterers, you're not having all of these in-person details anymore, but you are considering your software, as you mentioned, the two that you guys were using with your event, Nina, as well as a couple events that I have coming up. There are so many different software platforms that are out there. So you're going to really need to tap into that. Who on your team are available to do those sorts of things and to tap into those resources? What event planning, person, group, business are you working with that will be able to run those things for you? You're going to, branch out a team. You might be contracting out more pieces to the puzzle, someone who is doing your video production. So if you're doing a pre-recorded event, even if you're doing a Zoom event, someone who is going to help you with how to practice for that and how to run those technical backgrounds, because that's a thing that you're not used to before. Yes, you have someone who is just in the venue that can answer questions, but someone also now needs to be tech support, and those can be two totally different skill sets for different people. So we ended up having someone who redid the entire website, someone who was on the software technology, and someone who was on videography, and someone who was taking photographs. So definitely trying to figure out, now that you have your budget, what portions of that budget are going to which things, and then your goal as well. So if your goal is a certain amount, maybe readjusting your goal, or depending on whether you want to change that or not, is just expecting a different yield when the end of your event happens, because you're not deducting some of those bigger ticket items.
And I would second all of those things. And related to sort of the team generation part, getting the right people in place, is that I feel like sometimes when you engage in a new endeavor, people will throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? And they're just like, well, we need completely new types of people and job descriptions and all this sort of stuff. And I think Rosa would agree with this, what my theater training has told me is that you always have the right people. You just have to give them the right opportunities to shine. And a good example for us is that we had an incredible social media person, Marco Faroni, who's an incredible dancer, artist, who, when we were in person, they managed our social media feed, dealt with artists. They themselves are an artist and is really good at communication. What became very clear is that Marco's interest in the company moved beyond social media and was leading towards curatorial work. So what we were able to do, because Danny, our curator, it wasn't necessary for her to be in the studio, Marco was given an opportunity to work directly in a stage manager capacity to essentially become like art management with our host, Randy. And also I was able to tap back into like my stage management experience and being sort of the conduit between our backstage folks and the folks in the studio. So recognizing that your people, if you just have those open conversations about what the needs are and how you can refit people, I think is really important. And as well as the budgeting. So a thing to have to reimagine is that, like, we know in-person events usually carry a huge expense, but I think in general, you can expect to spend less money. Like, you just there, I mean, I'm sure that you could find a way to spend a lot of money on a virtual event. I'm sure you could. However, I think by scaling your budgets back, I think you have the opportunity to think really creatively about how you tell that story. What story are you telling? Beforehand, you would spend all this money either on the venue itself or on table settings. Well, if that money doesn't have to go there, maybe that is money to add that technical expertise. Maybe that is money that you can, honestly add for PPE stuff to have there. But I just think people have to, in that reimagining, like, you're not creating the same type of grand event that like some of us are used to doing. So rethinking and coming to terms with that, and also having that affect like ultimately what your goal is.
Yes, well, and your marketing is going to be different too, because you're not having this event that people are used to showing up to and having a reason to step out. You still want them to have that same excitement built around your event. You still want them to, be empowered and be encouraged and to lean into your mission and your vision and why you want to move forward, your reason for wanting to raise the goal that you're wanting to raise. And so your marketing should and could look completely different as well, because now how do I get people excited and engaged about something that they cannot physically be at? And you guys showed a little bit about that too within the table hosts or the table captains, which was in that other particular event that we looked at the slides earlier. Our table host, or we called them watch party hosts, we didn't cater. We didn't have the food come to their door. We encouraged all of the table hosts to come up with their own menu and say, okay, well, my group of people that I am pulling together to watch this event together, we are all going to cook this recipe at home on our own and eat together and text each other together and do these things in our own separate spaces. So it's getting them excited to do this different thing when they're totally sitting on, well, how and when and why when I used to do this, and is it going to be the same, and is it going to feel the same, and am I going to leave this event with that same heartfelt, touching, experience that I have in the past.
Yeah. I love how you guys are both bringing up storytelling and the communication with your inner circle, whether we're talking about those board members, those table captain types. Those people are still just as important to this effort. And Rosa, I love the creative idea around like having them decide on what their menu is going to be and exchange the recipe. A few of my clients are doing what CD Forum did on Nina's project and partnering with some local food purveyors to do deliveries, which was awesome, totally works. And then a lot of our catering companies around town are offering wonderful delivery menus that come in the afternoon. And then you do, the same thing we've always done as event planners, where we get the menu, we get the signature cocktail, it's all good, it just gets delivered. Usually we're doing those at an upgraded ticket price so that folks can tune in and enjoy either the broadcast or the live stream for this amount of $0 or a little bit above zero. And then for a lot bigger investment, the meal is donated. And the awesome thing for our nonprofit budgets then is like, you're not just shelling out money for food for folks who may not care. You're going to charge that upgrade. And so financially, then it makes sense to engage the catering company. I would highly recommend anyone watching this or listening to this. Yeah, don't think you won't do catering, because it could be that extra special thing that makes your event really shine. Also, just the party box, the interactive, fun doodads, fun party stuff that can be mailed or delivered to your guest's home can make that kind of three-dimensional experience. I also want to mention timelines, because I get some of my clients, we start into a process and they're like, I don't understand how we're going to do an event. It's only 8 weeks away. I usually send my save the dates 8 months in advance. And I'll say, yeah, but it's 2020. So our calendars live in a really different realm now. So I always like to bring that up. Like, don't look at the calendar and look at your event plan that you've been working with for 10 years and think you have to somehow replicate it now. Nina or Rosa, do you have any reflections on that?
Well, our attention spans just can't deal with it. And I felt like even before this, like the traditional mail your save the dates, you were still fighting for people's attention. You just could say you put money behind a mailing. But it's like, especially in the age of COVID, and I'll speak specifically to CD Forum, like 20-year-old organization, and, we went through a shift as a company even before this, and we were kind of on this uphill trajectory, almost kind of getting back to that more traditional fundraiser model, but again, trying to make it like, what does CD Forum want to accomplish? And we were doing the kind of traditional sending stuff out, but what I'm finding, especially as people are responsive to our overall social media and digital content in general, is that like sending stuff a lot in advance just doesn't necessarily make the most sense. Like, absolutely make sure the information is available so people know, and you have that section of your website up. But as far as like exactly what you said, I just don't. Everything is changing. Like, I know that's a cliche, but like so much is happening, and not even with COVID, but with the way that our world is waking up to social issues. I feel like we're going to have to be more responsive as a sector than what we were able to before. And there may come a point where like, yes, you've planned this fundraiser months in advance, but given the way our world is, what if like things happen so quickly that you may need to adjust what that fundraiser looks like? And if you haven't been doing this 8-month, 10-month timeline, you give yourself more flexibility.
That is a super good point. I had several groups in June, right when the Black Lives Matter movement was really taking over, rightfully so. And they said, oh, we are not going to throw this event this week because it would be the wrong thing to do this week, because we're not on message, we're not in step. And it was really the right thing for them to just postpone that. And so, not to frighten anyone who's listening to this, but yeah, be ready, be light on your feet. You're a tap dancer now. You're not driving a snowplow. You're up on top, light, moving in where you are needed and moving out when it's not the right time for you. Yeah, seriously. I think I did want to talk a tiny bit about auction. I know that hasn't been a big part of either of your events necessarily, but I do have plenty of clients who are doing auctions. And I noticed this spring, probably everyone else noticed as well, that a lot of the school auctions did a terrific job of doing these really simple transformations where they had already procured some items, but all of a sudden they couldn't have the party. So then we just, again, put those items online, maybe have a little Zoom party, have a little gathering, get folks together. Live auctions are working as well, especially if you have a live stream event so that your auctioneer can respond in real time and walk people through purchasing the items. You do need fundraising software with a mobile bidding. And then you do the virtual raise the paddle, again, through that mobile bidding software. So I just want to mention that. I don't want to spend a lot of time on it because the auction software people can sell you the whole package and it's all good. But just know that it works and that it's something worth doing. Any other things? Oh, I know one thing I wanted to mention is how to reimagine. We're still in the reimagination section of the agenda here. I'm really encouraging my clients to think of if there's something in your event that you've been a little tired of and you've been hoping to kill it. This is the year to just do what you want with your event, because it's yours now. And if any of your board members are like, oh no, what happened to the dessert dash? You'll be like, guess what? it's gone, and you don't have to apologize. You can just move forward and make a plan that really feeds you. So if there's something, again, like, take advantage, like, this is your chance to redesign, and sometimes getting rid of something can be the most freeing.
And there was, I was looking through our notes. That's why I'm doing that there. And the accessibility point I wanted to make sure that we did highlight in the age of virtual fundraisers is that while creating exclusivity to a point can incentivize like those larger scale donors, like, and not even anything like intense. And Rose, you spoke really well about this, just giving people access to a link earlier than others, or having like particular landing pages. What we did find is that, again, for us, charging people a ticket into our event when for us it was more of a celebration didn't make sense. For what we found is like, so what's that cost benefit? Getting their contact information for us was huge. And that was kind of how we set up, like, what is the cost of entering this event? Giving me your name, email address, phone number, and so I can reach out to you. And I'm interested in kind of making more of that. But I think this is a great opportunity for folks who maybe have always wanted to have like more dynamic price points for fundraisers. Because I attended a meeting where folks were really talking about like, oh, you have the big fancy gala and then there's the after party for the young people. And I will say that really irks my nerve, and I get it. Like, I get it. Like, big old money moves in certain ways, but we've seen where that has landed us when we cater to big old money all the time. And if we're saying we're about accessibility, then you have to be accessible. And I'm not saying make all of your events free. What I am saying is that the virtual landscape allows for you to make it a more viable option. And that's what like people could, and yeah, so that's all I would say, is that I think now more than ever, this gives us the chance to invite more, and not even just price point, people around the country. Like, what would that look like if your event had people that like are on the East Coast or down south? Like, how cool could that be?
Precisely. Yeah. With this last event, we had lots of, just a way broader pool of donors and viewers that were coming through and able to take part in the event, which was so beautiful, because here we are. And now even moving forward in events that are wanting to do both, when we are able to come back into the outside, they're also wanting to have the same virtual access available, because they realize a lot of people are being cut off that want to be included, and that the distance is the only barrier.
Nice. Another nice opportunity that I'm finding with my groups who do more of a formal keynote, like if they have a luncheon with a formal remarks from a bigwig or, special person, is I think in the online space, we have the opportunity to actually engage that keynote instead of just listening to them give a speech and then they walk off the stage and everyone claps and it's over. We're doing Q&As, we're doing after events where that person shows up to like a video chat to really answer questions, really engage more deeply with their material. So just wanted to mention that as well. Like, all these things are like, I always thought a keynote, I don't know, I can be a little judgmental, but I'm like, oh, keynote, schmenote, like, let's get to the fundraising, who cares? But now I'm like, wow, you have this very special big picture thinker in the virtual room. Let's go ahead and think with them. Let's go ahead and engage.
Mm-hmm. And Alex, you just made me remember something too that we talked about wanting to hit in this reimagine, is that it's not just the day. Like, I remember us talking about that. Like, so I have seen examples from like Hedgebrook, the Women's Playwriting Festival did a really good example where their fundraiser was like, I think spread over a couple weeks. And it was, I think they did use a peer-to-peer model as well, but it was about releasing content. And so, us was the peer-to-peer, and then the event was kind of like the celebration point. But I feel like I'm seeing more and more people, it's not just the day anymore. Like, you have that ability. And even us, our campaign didn't actually close until a day after the event, and people were still giving. So folks who couldn't like log in, or they couldn't figure out the registration properly, like they were still able to participate, and that carried value. So I think that's also worth mentioning, is that like, it's not just for you, as the staff, the buildup is always like getting ready. And then for everybody else, it's the night, it's the day. But I don't think that's necessarily the case anymore.
It's not. Yeah, it's definitely broadening, which is really awesome to see the exposure that your event gets and having, a longer time of showing your event, promoting your event, and spreading it for those that have participated.
Yeah, and how those little stories could unfold over a social media campaign that then links back to that landing page, that then you release another bit 2 days later, and then you go live with a special guest, so it's that whole couple of weeks, maybe leading up to a big event, or maybe it just is that. It's just that campaign of storytelling and connection and good stuff. All right, shall we move on to the challenges? You guys ready?
Yes.
Okay. Me too. I'm ready. I'm always ready for a challenge. Here we go. Let me bring this. Oh, hello. I am sharing the screen. Here it comes. So challenges, and I do just want to mention these things because I think it's good for us to know what might be lurking out there, and just so we can step with care and step on the right path and not get bogged down. The Washington State Gambling Commission, the next two things I'm going to speak about are very specific to Washington State, and I don't want to spend too long on this, but just let people know. Washington State Gambling Commission does not want you to sell games of chance over the internet. That means your raffle is probably not going to happen unless you can find a way to go door to door safely and sell those raffle tickets. Sadly, you cannot just add that to your donation page and be like, $25, I'd like to add a raffle ticket, and somebody draws it out of the jar. That's actually no-go. Don't do it. Just saying that for the good of the order. If you have any questions, contact the Washington State Gambling Commission, not me. Okay. And then the Washington State Liquor and Cannabis Control Board, we run up against the liquor control rules in two different ways, usually in events. One of them is we want our guests to be able to have a drink, right? Like we want to serve some alcohol. So I think there are some possibilities if you're going to pull that special occasion license as a nonprofit and sell an opportunity to drink as part of an upgrade package earlier when I was talking about the catering. But I think you need to step pretty carefully here because I think it matters. You don't want anyone under 21 delivering that bag of food and drinks, right? And you want to be able to check an ID at the door of whoever's receiving that bag, right? So there's a lot of risk. And to cut a long story short, for most of my clients, I'm encouraging them to partner with that local restaurant and bar or partner with that catering company that has their own liquor license so that all this delivery of alcohol moving around our city does not in any way fall back on the nonprofit. And again, that's just a risk management thing. That's where I'm at with it. I don't think there's no way to do it. And sometimes I'll have clients who are like, but we have all this wine because we already bought it. We have to do something with it. And I'm like, okay, we'll find something to do. Like we'll find a way. We'll find a legal way to get that into the hands of your guests. But, just know that it's something you should definitely think about and talk about and potentially pull that special occasions license. And the second way we run into the liquor control rules are around auctioning off an auction package that includes bottles of alcohol. Currently, it is legal to do that, but only if you have a live auction. You may not put a case of wine into your silent auction. There's very specific rules about that. It has to do with where the sale is taking place and at what time and date. The Liquor Control Board just wants to know exactly when the auctioneer is going to say sold and sell you those bottles. So it can be done. Again, you got to pull that special occasion permit for the date of your event and the venue from which you're broadcasting, your live stream venue. I think that's all I'm going to say about that. Because again, there's multiple questions that could be asked, but everyone's needs are so unique and specific that I don't want to give you lots and lots of information that might not be true. And then number 3 here is COVID-19 contagion. So, this is always a little bit of a mind blower for me because, we're working so hard to do these online events. You guys, people are out there busting it, doing a great job. But the whole reason we're doing it is to stay super safe. And once in a while I get into a client meeting and they're like, well, our guests could maybe gather in small groups inside someone's home and watch the broadcast together. And I say, and why would you encourage that? Wouldn't that be a very bad thing to, be encouraging? So this is just a constant conversation. And of course, we are all hoping that this will change in the coming months. But just wanted to hear your reflections, Nina and Rosa, on any of this safety stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, 100% agree that we cannot tell people what to do, but I love how you emphasize we are not encouraging them to join together, even in small groups. If that's something that they're already deciding to do, but just making it very clear and repetition, repeating that is not the message that you are putting out there, is that you want them to do that. Just specifying that it is an individual event, that you want them to be participating as individuals from their own spaces. And that what connects them are those, boxes, the meals, those other components.
And I will just add that we all know it's tough. Like, it's been hard. And if you are in the live performing, presenting, if you are associated with arts and culture, like, it's hard because our job is connecting with humans, and our job is to be near and dear and hold and hug and talk and do all those sorts of stuff. And it's hard. But as a case study was sent to me that I read that horrified me about what can happen when you get complacent. And again, we did a live stream from the studio of our production lead. We had a very limited number of people in there. Everybody had their mask on with the exception of our host, who was, a safe distance away from us. But even then, because again, we haven't had that, it was so easy to forget, right? And you close that gap really quickly. And I would never want to be on the end of somebody's diagnosis, because again, the whole point is that it's not about me. It is about the loved ones of these people who I care deeply about. And it's hard. It is so hard. And the desire to gather and to be near is so intense. But I would just say that as we are planning and as because we're going to be inundated with that feedback, especially if you're a big enough organization to say have a steering committee of people for your fundraiser. And people are like, well, why can't we have a little backyard gathering? Why can't? And it's and our challenge, I feel, as fundraising professionals is that we're that connector, right, between meeting the needs of the organization and the volunteers who work for us, but also we have a public duty to keep people safe. As a nonprofit, we get that tax designation for a reason, because we provide a public good. And it is I think it's going to be very challenging, especially as different states and counties reopen and have different, phases and stuff. And it's just just be as up on your county, city, states reopen policy as you can. And like Rosa said, communicate. I'm starting to pay attention a lot to how organizations actually communicate their stance on COVID and making that as public as possible. If you go to the CD Forum website, we have a little tab that says COVID-19, and there's a letter with resources, and we are starting to put more information about that in just our general communications. But yeah, if you haven't already had a conversation about how you as a company stand with that, then when it comes to events that might cause people to gather, that's the time to have it if you haven't already.
Nice. All right. Well, you guys, I think we are tracking really well on time. We have just 7 or 8 minutes left. I think we should talk about, ready? Da-da-da, how to move forward. Okay. So we talked about some strategies that the three of us have seen working. We talked about, we looked at some case studies there. We talked about how to sort of reimagine, rethink budgeting, timeline, the staffing, all the things, all the pieces and parts. And then we talked about some scary stuff that you just want to get out ahead of and be thinking. But now it's time to really move into it, because this is 2020, definitely in the Seattle area. I don't see the fall fundraising season being anything but remote. And I honestly don't see the spring 2021 fundraising season. I personally will be thrilled if anyone gets together, safely, right? If we're actually there, I'll be thrilled. I personally predict that until at least a year from now, if you're planning a fundraising event, go ahead and plan it online. Probably the one thing I'll say just to kick us off, and then I just would love to hear what these amazing women have to say, but I'm really advising my clients, especially the ones who are really getting anxious about next March, next April, next May. They're like, well, should we be planning? Should I go ahead and reserve that venue just in case? And honestly, I'm kind of like, nah, don't. Just plan to go remote. Just plan it, because in my mind, other types of events are going to come back, right? Like Comic-Con will probably come back, Coachella will come back, the hockey season will start, and all that could happen. But then I think fundraising for nonprofit, our events, are going to be the last to come back, because as Nina was just saying, we hold the public trust. Our organizations are responsible for the health of communities. So other events may come back, but ours will be the final ones to come back, and rightfully so, I believe. So I think it's time to just get really good at doing this, whatever this is, inside the box. But what other thoughts do the two of you have? What advice can you offer?
Yeah, those are good thoughts. And I think, when you're mentioning that and why, us being last to come back is because we're more of a collective. We're gathering, we're making ourselves responsible for this big group of people versus those other events you mentioned are more individualistic. So it's kind of like a go at your own risk. And I know that any of us would never want to lead forward with that kind of come at your own risk. If you feel great, come. If you don't. But I think what is a big thing that I say is like, don't let this feel like, oh, now we have to do this, or this is our plan B, our plan, whatever. This is your plan now. This is it. Like, this is the real thing. This is how you're moving forward. So don't do it as well, this is instead of this and this is instead of that. No, this is what we're doing now. This is our thing. This is the big deal, and getting everyone on board with that. And I think one additional thing to add that we didn't talk too much about is our volunteers. So you've got volunteers, your person who has done your decorations forever and ever, that person who has been, signing in people at the registration table, et cetera. I know you can think of so many different volunteer roles that now that volunteer is saying, well, hey, I want to help still. What do I do? So making sure that they are not forgotten, moving forward, bringing them onto the table. They may have some ideas that you had no idea you're sitting on because those ideas weren't needed before. And so now that we are going forward with virtual events and all of the different types that we spoke about today, well, what volunteers do you have in your pocket that know? Maybe you've got a techie person sitting, in your volunteer pool that says, oh, hey, I can definitely manage that software for you, or I can create a new website for you, or I can manage these other things. So definitely, don't leave those volunteers hanging. They're there to help, and they're there to make those events go a lot smoother for you.
Such a good reminder. Oh my God. Like the people are going to be so much more important going forward to keep that momentum going. And one thing that comes to mind, just because I've been in some conversations lately around just the shifting nature of philanthropy in the US, and to an extent globally, is that I think what moving forward means is that event that you would have once a year that would generate all of your revenue is like, you have to start thinking about revenue diversification. Like, again, I try and think about best practice as much as I can. Again, every situation is different and specific, but like, how much healthier is your company going to be if that huge event that caused your staff the most stress, like every year, like the kind where like as soon as it's done, they have to start planning for it. What if you didn't do that? What if it was more, because why do we have fundraising events? Like, yes, you want to raise money because it helps with your bottom line, but ultimately, aren't they meant to be celebrations and gatherings and moments for you to reflect and think about, like, how did we get here? Because they usually end either at the calendar year or your fiscal year end, or so it's marking some significant part of your calendar, however you define that. And how much cooler would our events be? How less stressful might they be for the staff? I say this as someone who is a frontline events staff person, and these events stress people out. If it was not about that bottom line, what if, instead of you worrying about how many wonderful packages are you going to get for this auction, what if you procured 3 really amazing pieces that were really deeply significant, and then you had an incredible program lineup that stretched over a couple weeks? I feel like that would be a better move for your mission and the people that make that mission possible. And I know, like, this pandemic is just revealing how jacked the infrastructure is in the nonprofit sector. Like, we've known this for a really long time. It's not new to people who are paying attention, but the cracks were going to get revealed eventually. And now that timeline's just accelerated. So I think how we move forward is to think about why do we have fundraisers? Why do we do these events? Like, and it's because of the mission. And if the whole thing is causing everybody to hate what they're doing, or it's causing so much stress, slow down, take a breath, drink something probably, and and maybe rethink, how could we do this in a more sustainable way?
Yeah. Well, if you think about your annual events too as being 6 to maybe 12% of your budget, don't let it devastate you so much. You know, that's for a lot of organizations, that portion, when you look at it that way, all of the pomp and circumstance and the getting ready for it and the, you know, aftermath after it is a lot bigger than where it really actually sits on your budget. And so if you look at it as to not what you can't do anymore, but what now you can do, and thinking of all of the things that your organization has not been doing in avenues that you have not been tapping into, now you get to think about what we can do and how we can reach other people and how we get our message out, I think is a beautiful thing to consider moving forward.
And Alex mentioned something earlier too, that I think I would be interested to see how we might do this, but the partnership. Right? Like that example you use, like to my knowledge, I don't think CD Forum's ever partnered with another org on a joint, like revenue thing like that. And I think it could be really interesting if there was like good mission alignment, like what might that look like? So I think as we think about moving forward, you're right. How can we pool our resources and not, again, that like this, like hoarding our treasure, like that's not going to serve anybody.
Yeah, communities are bigger and more complicated. It's not like my little nonprofit has its own people that are separate from, guess what, it's Seattle, everyone's been to every fundraiser, right? Like, so how do you create a community that's actually interconnected? And I think 2020 is teaching us that at least there's a glimmer of hope in that direction. I think we should probably wrap up. I think it's been our allotted 60 minutes, and I just want to appreciate both of you, Rosa and Nina, for being part of this with me.
This was a joy. I am so glad to be doing this with both of you.
This was awesome. And Rosa, it's been a pleasure to get to know you and meet you. I'm sure we'll bump into each other in the virtual landscape.
I hope for that. Yes.
All right, let's just wave goodbye, and it's over.
Thank you.